Good morning. You're watching a remote broadcast of Business World Live. I'm Jes Delos Santos. It's 10:33 a.m. this Friday in Manila. We are more than an hour into the trading day, at least the last trading day of the week. Let's go straight to our top story. The government has terminated negotiations with the so-called NAIA consortium after more than 2 years of discussions. The Transportation Department announced that the Manila International Airport Authority, or MIAA, revoked the original proponent status, or OPS, given to the consortium. In a statement, the MIAA said the consortium claimed it will have difficulty obtaining funding for the 102 billion peso NAIA rehabilitation under the current approved terms and conditions, citing the group's letter to NEDA. The DOTR and MIAA then said the consortium expressed that it could only proceed with the project if such terms and conditions are revised in light of the effects of the pandemic. The consortium earlier said the far-reaching and long-lasting consequences of the health crisis on travel, airline operation, and airport passenger traffic prompted a review of the terms to ensure that the project will be viable in the new normal. For De La Salle business professor attorney Antonio Ligon, the government should be willing to renegotiate the deal and consider how the pandemic affected the global tourism industry. He also said both parties should consider the current situation, but for Union Bank chief economist Carlo Asuncion, the government should not be faulted for trying to get a, quote, better deal. He said the government has the right to whom it may choose to deal, taking into account the pandemic and its ill impacts on government revenues and infrastructure spending. Finance Chief Sonny Dominguez earlier said two other proponents have shown interest in the project at the terms indicated by the government. The NAIA consortium is composed of 6 conglomerates: Aboitiz Infracapital, AC Infrastructure Holdings, Alliance Global, Asia's Emerging Dragon, Philinvest, and JG Summit. Metro Pacific was originally part of the group but withdrew from the project partly due to unresolved tax payments issues. And that story we've been covering for the past few days now, and we've seen quite a diverse movement, at least from those stocks that are involved in the NAIA consortium project there, after them saying that the only way for them to really move forward with the project is through this revised proposals and project proposals, at least for the rehabilitation and the upgrade of NAIA. Now, also looking at how the index is performing, we are continuing those declines at the start of Friday's trade here. You can see now the index is down by as much as 0.9%. We are back to that 6100 level at 6,139.63 to be exact here. And really, the prevalent theme for the most part of the week, that surge in domestic cases, that really is a stone that's been dragging the bourse for the most part of the trading week. Thursday, we did see the index slumping by as much as 1.5%, sending us back to 6,192. And that has been continuing on, at least at the start of today's trade. Again, we are slipping by 0.9%. Now, Claire Alvear of the stocks is saying that this comes after the country reported its highest spike in infections on Wednesday. That is over 2,500 cases, putting us really at that grim milestone of 50,000 cases. So far, we've already reached, we are nearing 52,000 infections with some 1,500 cases reported yesterday. Let's see how that is going to shape trading, at least at the last trading day of the week. And so far, things are not looking so good for the index. Again, we are declining 0.9%. And Chris Magno of AAA Southeast Equities, he sees the index testing that support level of 6,040 today. This is investors continue to worry that we might actually revert to stricter quarantine measures, which in turn would cancel out hopes of an economic rebound. But now, to some more developments on the local bourse here. You have 4 new securities have been qualified as Sharia compliant. These are Metro Alliance A and B, PXP Energy, as well as SPC Power Corporation. Some stocks, though, were removed from the list. This includes To Go, Italpinas, and Vivant. Now, that puts the total number of Sharia compliant stocks to 52. The PSE is doing that quarterly review to encourage Muslim investors to tap the local market by determining securities that follow Islamic standards of finance. So question now is, what are these requirements? Quite a long list here. But basically, what this requires is that the company should have less than 5% of its income coming from adult entertainment, like alcohol, cinema, defense, and weapons as well, and financials, gambling, gold and silver hedging, as well as music, pork, and tobacco. Now, on to more how our stocks are performing, at least at the start of the trading day. Let's see which stocks are starting the day in the green. You have FGen here now gaining over 2% here. More at the same time, Pure Gold as well. Some of our consumer stocks here gaining big as well, up 1.6%. Also, BPI, as you can see here, now in the green, 0.9%. And very interesting to note here, what's happening with BPI is that, they are saying that the response to their 3 billion peso care bonds or COVID response bonds has actually surpassed its issue size. With that, they are ending the offer on the bond. Again, those are 1.75-year bonds with interest rate of 3.05% per annum. The proceeds of those, of course, will help the bank bolster its financing and refinancing of eligible SMMEs under their sustainable funding framework. The stock, though, was down over 3% yesterday, but somehow they are reversing track today. They are up 0.9%. Now, on the other hand, you have those stocks that are declining. Bloomberry is now in the negative territory. The worst performer, down 4.1%. Ayala Land, likewise, is declining close to 2.9%. But at the same time, I want to zero in on how JG Summit is performing. Earlier yesterday, we did see some gains here for the stock. Now they are still in the green, up 0.4%. They are part of the NAIA consortium, but also one other development here. Their airline unit, Cebu Pacific, is letting go of 800 workers. That's what they reported yesterday. This is new air travel landscape is bound to require less manpower, according to Cebu Pacific. They are going to redefine their long-term plans. They say as well, Cebu Pacific is too big for the operational requirements and expected new norms of the industry. And while they have resumed flights as early as June 2, the number of flights actually account for less than 10% of their pre-quarantine network. Yesterday, you have the stock climbing 1.9% despite that news. However, this time around, they are on the losing end here, declining, slumping, in fact, by 3.7%. The stock is now priced at 40 pesos and 65 centavos a piece. And then lastly, let's also have a look at GT Capital here. Their 15.1 billion peso bond just got a vote of confidence. Phil Ratings gave it a PRS AAA credit rating, which means there's minimal credit risk for the bond offer. And Phil Ratings is in fact saying, GT Capital has an extremely strong capacity to meet its financial commitment and obligation. That bond offer was also given a stable outlook. Now, looking at how the stock is performing, though, they are down 0.7%, now priced in at 445 pesos a piece, pretty much joining the sell-off that we've been seeing across the local bourse. Now, here are other stories we're watching this morning. The World Bank is looking to approve a $300 million loan to support the Agus Pulangi Hydropower Complex rehab project on September next year. Rehabilitation of the hydropower complex is expected to restore its deteriorating capacity, in effect raising the share of clean energy in Mindanao. The hydro plants in the complex were found to be nearing the end of their operational life and have become highly inefficient. But in its assessment, the World Bank said the rehabilitation project entails significant social risks. For one, the complex has 6 plants on the Agus River and 1 on the Pulangi River. Indigenous peoples like the Manobo move across their riverside camps through these rivers, which they have long considered part of their home. Tribe leaders and civil organizations have therefore opposed development plans over the area. The international lender is expecting that all risk management plans will be prepared prior to its appraisal of the project in July 2021. Now, on to some other news. New Clark City Interlap is being positioned as a possible center for agri-industrial companies. The Agriculture Department and the Basis Conversion and Development Authority recently inked a partnership to pursue agri-industrial initiatives. Now, industrial processing sites are expected to provide facilities, capital, and production know-how to small farmers while generating more jobs. Last week, the DA and the BCDA officials inspected a 30-hectare site in New Clark City where agri-industrial firms could set up their offices. This business corridor will complement the planned Clark Fresh Market, which will feature an integrated post-harvest facility where people can shop for organic produce, allow certified products, and other food products. Construction of the new agri-industrial business corridor is expected to start next year. Aside from New Clark City, the Agriculture Department is evaluating possible agribusiness corridors at 12 new economic zones identified by PEZA. And the Anti-Money Laundering Council is urging lawmakers to expedite amendments to the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2001. Key revisions sought are more subpoena power for the council and bringing tax evasion and terrorism financing charges within the regulation's purview. Recall that the Philippines is currently under a 12-month observation period until February, during which the country is expected to address gaps in its anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing rules. The Council says failure to pass and implement AMLA amendments before February 2021 will land the Philippines in the gray list of the Financial Action Task Force International Co-op Review Group. AMLA says this will translate to additional paperwork and cost for transactions with the European Union, along with other effects on international trade, remittances, and humanitarian aid inflows that support economic growth and development. More economic and corporate news when Business World Live returns after a short break. Good morning. You're still watching Business World Live here on One News. Now, the pandemic is forcing most sectors to rethink the way they do business, and the property space is no exception. The industry has had to deal with some damages as lockdowns were imposed in the country, but a digital shift might actually be the saving grace for the sector. Now, to talk about how they're making that push, we have Chris Elder, CEO of fintech company Nook, an online mortgage broker. Good morning, Chris. Nice to have you here with us on the show.
Good morning.
Yeah, all right. So first, explain to us Nook's business model as a mortgage broker, and how do you streamline the process via digital platforms?
Sure. So a mortgage broker like Nook has formed partnerships with multiple banks, and they act as an intermediary between those banks and home loan borrowers. And they help borrowers identify the right loan for them because they've got a very good bird's eye view of the entire housing loan market. And then they work to get that home loan approved with their banking partners.
And this time around, how is Nook exactly fast tracking that process at least, because somehow it can get overwhelming, especially for those who are seeking property. So how exactly does Nook help at least those who are seeking their properties here in the Philippines?
Yeah, so principally we're based around technology. So we're using technology based on the bank's criteria, and we match the borrower up to the right loan for them. So that's done very quickly, whereas the old-fashioned way requires people to travel from bank to bank to bank to line up and then sit around and wait for weeks to find out if they get their loan. But we basically do that with technology in around 3 minutes.
So in and the whole process, how long do you normally take, at least for the whole process? Normally it would take months here, but no, how much do you actually shorten that whole stage of processing documents, at least for loan approval and even for eventually at least getting that much desired property?
Yeah, so we are able to identify the bank that they will be approved for in around 3 minutes. So that's saving weeks of unknown time of whether they're going to get the loan. And then once it comes to the documentation collection, we're then doing that all online and in real time as well. And one of our banking partners suggests that we will save them at least a full day's processing to get the loan approved because of all the work that they were doing with the borrower.
Now you have presence across some countries, but question is, why enter a market such as the Philippines?
Well, we've got 100 million people, an emerging economy. We've got, thanks to COVID-19 as well, we're getting a lot of digital uptake in the country. So for us, it was really the low-hanging fruit in this region.
And but given a pre-COVID scenario, that would have pretty much been the case as well. There's so much expectation. At least the property space was booming. But given now that you have this in the background, the health crisis in the background, are you still hopeful that there would be enough demand, at least coming from the local market?
Yeah, look, I mean, COVID-19's affected every industry. But despite that, because we're a digital solution primarily, we've actually done not too bad. We actually are ahead of our 6-month forecast for the first half of 2020, despite the fact that we've had a lockdown. And this is principally because Nook has been one of the only ways that you can still move ahead with a home loan while the majority of banks have been closed. So it's actually been quite a boon for us.
And how's the take-up been so far for Nook? Like what you did mention, can you give us exact figures here? You did say that you have somehow reached at least half of your targets for the year.
Yeah, that's correct. So we're in the hundreds of millions of pesos of loans that are being processed now through our system.
And what type of properties are mostly in demand here in the local market?
Yeah, it's really a mix. I mean, when you get to the Cavite area, it's house and lots. Obviously, Metro Manila is dominated by condos. A growing market in terms of customers is the OFW market as well, because they're overseas and they need some local assistance to get their home loan approved in the easiest way possible. And we're helping them do that, as well as making better financial decisions for them and their families.
But how's the response as well from the lenders? Are they more amiable to this shift, at least to this use of digital platforms?
They are. They are. It's taken us a long time to form our partnerships. We launched at the start of this year, but we've been working on this since 2018 with our banking partners. But yeah, they're very open to it. They like the fact that there's a second set of eyes looking over the application process, and it's another streamlined way for them to get new home loan customers.
And tell us more about the demographics, at least for those who make use of Anook's platforms here. Are they mostly coming from young adults or millennials as well?
Yeah, typically around late 20s, early 30s. It's a mix of half-half of whether it's married or single people. OFWs are a growing market. Property developers now are becoming also a growing market for us, particularly as people come to the end of their rent-to-own space. Property developers are looking for someone to make sure that they get the 80% that they're sort of due on, say, month 25, and that's where Nook is starting to fit in nicely with the property sector there.
But at the same time, one interesting thing that's been happening due to the pandemic is that, unemployment is at an all-time high. And with that, of course, the expectation is that disposable income would not be as high as well for most of, especially when you're talking about a young working adults here. Do you see that somehow hampering demand for Nook's services?
Oh, of course. Anything that's going to hamper the real estate industry will impact us as a knock-on effect eventually, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to prices as well, do you see a softening in price appreciation?
A little bit. Well, certainly with the uptake of loans that we're getting, yeah, it's starting to creep down over the last few months.
Mm-hmm. And is it by a huge margin when you're talking about the declines here?
To be honest, no, it actually isn't, because again, coming back to the property developer segment, there's still a large portion of the population that needs to get their home loan at the end of their rent-to-own space. So regardless of the pandemic, that still needs to happen for them.
But do you find as well that property owners and developers are less enthusiastic when it comes to putting their spaces on offer?
On offer online?
Yeah.
Not so much for us anyway, not in the home loan space. We haven't sort of seen that sort of softening.
Mm-hmm. Like what you did mention as well, it's more of a benefit for you. At least there's a silver lining for Nook, despite the pandemic here. But do you see these gains being sustained even if lockdowns are lifted? And by how much increase are you expecting? Should of course things go back to normal if ever they will.
Yeah, obviously, if the real estate industry can return to its pre-pandemic levels, we're certainly going to see a lot more uptake. I mean, because the value proposition of a mortgage broker is pretty strong. Someone is going to do all the legwork to get your housing loan approved, and it doesn't cost you anything. So the value proposition that we're offering the market is pretty clear. And then once we get that message out to the market, we think the uptake will be better and better over the coming years.
And at the same time, of course, a lot of Nuke services is also banking and technology. But you see, technology adoption isn't always the fastest in the Philippines. Do you see this somehow hampering growth for Nuke?
No. So one of the best things about the lockdown period is it's given us time to form partnerships with lots of other companies. And there's several companies that we're looking at the moment to form a retail partnership. So working hand in hand with those that have already got a storefront, we're actually aiming, COVID-19 being kind to us, we're aiming to have at least 1,000 retail locations by the end of the year. Now, that means that those people who don't want to do the application online with our assistance, they can walk into a retail location and get some hand-holding by one of our accredited retail partners.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, also give us an idea the concentration of your clients here. Is it still mostly concentrated on in Mega Manila, and are there now plans to at least ramp up presence elsewhere in the country?
So we are countrywide. Obviously, Metro Manila is a strong market for us. Cebu is also another, it's probably the secondary market for us. But definitely Metro Manila is the leader at the moment.
Mm-hmm. But what other localities are you setting your sights on, or at least boosting your presence in particular other mega centers, perhaps across the country?
Yeah, so Manila, Cebu, Davao, and just OFWs generally around the world who need assistance to find their home loan the simplest way possible.
Mm-hmm. And then operations wise for Nook, what coping mechanisms have you had to put in place during the pandemic?
We've actually coped really well because we're principally around technology solution. We're all in the cloud, so having staff work from home hasn't been too bad for us. One shift we have done is do away with our call centre and shift completely to text-based communication, which has been actually a real productivity boost for us, because previously agents could only speak to one customer at a time, but now with chat-based communication from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m, we're able to deal with more customers at the same time.
All right. And lastly, what's in store for Nook? Are you trying to forge new partnerships up ahead, at least for the rest of the year?
Definitely, we want to build on those that we've established now, such as Remax Philippines that we've just signed, team over at MoneyMax, Acquire, who work with OFWs around the world. We want to build on these that we've already established and sort of take on more and more as well.
All right. Thank you very much for at least spending your morning with us, Chris Elder, CEO of fintech company Nook.
Thank you.
All right, let's have a quick check once again of how things are faring for the local index here. You see we're still extending those losses that we've been seeing for the past few days now. You have local shares declining by 0.9%. We're still at the 6100 level at 6,139.43 to be exact here. Again, the prevalent theme really for the most part of the week, you have the domestic cases of COVID-19 infections really rising, and now at the 2,000 levels here, even posting our highest single day increase of 2,500 on Wednesday, really putting us at that green milestone of 50,000 cases. Yesterday, we did manage as well record over 1,500 cases, putting us near that 52,000 level mark. Again, we are down by close to 0.9% at 6,139. But if there's any stock that we need to be keeping an eye on for today, that would have to be ABS-CBN. You have lawmakers finally wrapping up their 12 hearing sessions for ABS-CBN. Yesterday, they did sum up their positions on whether or not they should grant ABS-CBN a franchise. No voting happened yesterday, at least. Instead, they formed a technical working group, the purpose of which is to consolidate all the recommendations coming from lawmakers belonging to the House panel on legislative franchises. They did not release, however, any schedule as to when they'll vote on the franchise bid. But in an interview earlier on agenda here in One News, you have Congressman Boying Remulla from Govt saying, indicating that the voting is going to happen today. We do know as well that the technical working group is expected to lay down today during the House hearing a summary of the recommendations. Let's see if the vote will indeed happen after the recommendations are made. Yesterday, and we were tracking the movement of ABS-CBN, we did see them experiencing a sell-off in the morning, but they did manage to eke out some gains, at least at the latter part of the trade, with risk takers taking up the stock amid those declines earlier in the day. And so far, they are once again in the negative territory, down by 1.2%, now priced at 15 pesos a piece. And then from ABS-CBN, let's have a look at one particular sector of the economy here that seems to be undaunted by the crisis. I'm talking about our local currency, the peso. Of course, you have financial officials now touting it as one of the strongest in Asia. But as you can see here, the peso, the local currency, is somehow declining here, now priced in at 49.465 to the greenback. Again, let's see how things are going to fare for the peso and for the local bourse, which is so far declining at the start of the last trading day of the week. And that's a first look into the business day this Friday, July 10, 2020. Catch us again Monday next week at 10:30 a.m. I'm Jes Delos Santos. We are One News.